All right, let's dive in. Today we are talking about cataracts. But here's the thing, we're not going to look at them as just some simple, unavoidable part of getting older. No. We're going to pull back the curtain and unpack the science, which reveals it's actually the result of a lifelong battle happening inside your eyes for the clarity of your vision.
So let me just ask you this straight up. What if, right this very second, a microscopic war is being fought inside your eye? I'm talking about a slow, steady siege against the very things that let you see the world. Well, that's exactly what we're going to explore. Okay, so to really depth this battle, first we need to get to know the battlefield. And that is the lens of your eye. You have to think of it like a fortress, a perfectly engineered window that was designed for one thing and one thing only: absolute, perfect transparency. Now, the building blocks of this fortress, they're these specialized proteins called crystallins. And their entire job, their whole purpose for existing, is to be arranged in this incredibly precise, super organized way that lets light just sail right through without scattering at all. You know, a great way to picture this is to imagine perfectly stacked, totally transparent bricks. As long as every single one of those bricks is in its place, lined up just right and undamaged, that window stays crystal clear. But what happens when something starts chipping away at those bricks? Well, that brings us to the main villain of our story. It's this relentless, invisible attack from an enemy we call oxidative stress, and it brings an entire army of damaging molecules with it. So oxidative stress, it's what happens when these nasty little molecules called reactive oxygen species, or ROS for short, start to outnumber your body's defenses. These are the attackers, and they are constantly bombarding the fortress of your lens, just trying to mess up that perfect structure. And right here, this is where you can see the direct impact of that attack. See on the left? You've got a healthy, orderly crystalline protein, or perfect, transparent brick. But on the right, well, that's what happens after it's been hit. It unfolds, it gets all messy, and then it starts clumping together with other damaged proteins. And this, right here, is the key. These clumps start to scatter light. And that is the very, very beginning of the cloudiness we call a cataract. If we get a little nerdy with the biochemistry for a second, this is what that damage actually looks like. Key parts of the proteins get oxidized. This makes the proteins lose their shape, they link up on wrong, and then they form those dense clumps that just block and scatter light. That beautiful clear window, it's starting to get frosted over. And this right here, this is what makes the lens so incredibly vulnerable. The proteins in the very center of your lens are literally as old as you are. They never, ever get replaced. And that means every little bit of damage that happens just builds on itself, year after year, decade after decade. There's no fresh crew coming in to swap out the damaged bricks. But, this invisible attacker, it's not working alone. Oh no, it has a very powerful partner in crime, one that we all face pretty much every single day: UV radiation from the sun. You should think of UV light as powerful reinforcements showing up for the enemy army. It doesn't just create its own separate problems, it actively makes the oxidative stress that's already happening inside the lens way, way worse. It just speeds up the whole process of damage. And this all spirals into a nasty, vicious cycle. Just look at the steps here. The UV light creates more attackers, more ROS molecules, which then go on to damage the proteins. Now, this damage actually weakens the lens's own natural protective shield. And with a weaker shield, the lens absorbs even more damaging light, and the cycle just repeats and gets faster and faster over time. So, with all of this non-stop attacking and damage, how in the world does the lens survive for decades? Well, it's because it has its own army of defenders, a really complex antioxidant system that acts like the eye's personal bodyguards. Yeah, to fight back against this constant siege, your eye is far from helpless. It has an incredibly tough, multi-layered defense system that is on the job 24/7, working tirelessly to protect that perfectly clear window. And this breaks down that defense force beautifully. You've got your frontline soldiers, molecules like glutathione and vitamin C that just go in and neutralize attackers directly. Then you have specialized units, enzymes like catalase, that are designed to disarm very specific types of enemies. And finally, you've got the cleanup and repair crews, these things called chaperones that stop proteins from clumping, and other systems that try to clear out all the damaged debris. It's a whole operation. For most of our lives, this is a pretty balanced fight, The defenders hold the line, but this is a battle of attrition. It's a long, slow war. And eventually, that lifelong assault starts to overwhelm the eye's aging defenses.
And that's the real problem. After decades of constant fighting, the fortress's defenses, they just start to weaken. The supply lines get thinner, the soldiers get tired, and the sheer volume of attackers finally starts to overwhelm those repair crews. I mean, this chart says it all. Just look at the level of glutathione. That's the master antioxidant, one of our absolute best bodyguards. At age 25, its levels are way up there, nice and high. But look what happens by age 75. They've plummeted. With its best defenders so depleted, the lens is left incredibly vulnerable to attack. So what it all comes down to is this. There is a tipping point. When the rate of damage from oxidative stress finally becomes greater than the eye's ability to defend itself and repair, that damage is no longer manageable. It becomes permanent. It's irreversible. And this slide right here, this basically summarizes the entire story we've been telling. In a youthful eye, the antioxidant defenses are stronger than the oxidative damage, and the result is clarity. But in an aging eye, that whole equation flips. The oxidative damage overwhelms the weakened defenses, and the result is a cataract. The battle has been lost. So let's just do a quick recap of the big points here. At their core, cataracts are caused by oxidative damage that makes proteins clump up and scatter light. We learned that UV radiation from the sun is a huge accelerator for this whole process. And while our eyes have these amazing defenses, they get weaker as we age. And a cataract, well, it's really just the physical evidence that damage has finally won the war against repair. And that kind of leaves us with one last big thought. Once you understand this whole thing is a lifelong battle between damage and defense, it totally shifts how you think about the problem, right? It really makes you wonder, what could the future of preventing this damage, or maybe even reinforcing our natural defenses, what could that actually look like?